real time last night, I did not see that happen. I don't, none of our team saw it happen, because I promise you if we would have seen that happen, we would have had her back. Unfortunately, this type of shit happens every single game to her, and the league and the refs do absolutely.
During an episode of her personal podcast, a WNBA player recently took up a microphone and publicly promotional posters. Even though she was aware that her remarks could result in a fine, she went so far as to declare the entire scenario a complete joke. This is a fast-paced narrative, so get ready. Tell me what you think before we get started. Did Sophie go too far by openly disparaging both her league and her own side, or is she speaking out by stating what everyone else stays silent? Tell everyone in the comments. This is how it all happened. Another episode of Sophie Cunningham's Show Me Something podcast was broadcast. However, this time she attacked the league directly rather than keeping to the typical safe player talk. An active player who is still under contract and earning money from the WNBA publicly called the whole thing a joke. Since players typically protect the league's reputation, such kind of public criticism is incredibly uncommon. Sophie plainly determined she wasn't going to be silent.
Cunningham, her latest episode of the Show Me Something podcast, go subscribe, has come out, and she keeps it real about the state of the team defensively. She also talks about the Alyssa Thomas, Caitlin Clark fiasco and what the hell's going on in the league. Like, why does she keep getting targeted? And she also slams the league for not marketing Caitlin.
The issue she addressed was the one nearly no athlete in uniform is prepared to openly raise: the constant targeting of Caitlin Clark. Ignored no portion of the discussion. She alleged opponents are purposefully going after Clark while the officials and the league continue to do nothing to keep her protected. She cited the video of Clark being struck by a knee and receiving a cheap shot to the throat before explaining that the entire squad would be furious if any of their other teammates suffered the same fate. However, because Clark is the player in question, identical instances continue to occur from one game to the next while everyone else just observes without intervening. The most striking feature was how commonplace these instances seem to have become. Sophie disclosed that throughout the match, neither she nor her teammates were aware of the shot to Clark's throat. They totally missed it because they were preoccupied with the game. Think about that for a moment. She clarified that they would have intervened right away to support Clark if they had seen it firsthand. Rather, even the players who share the court with her are unable to see every instance of physical contact because it happens so fast and frequently. That suggests something far more significant than a single challenging game. It implies a recurring pattern that is now practically commonplace.
Also slams the league for not marketing Caitlin Clark. You know, we was talking about that poster, and there is potentially a thing involving licensing as to why she's not on that poster. But I did get to thinking about something else that made me go, well, hold on now. Diana Taurasi's not on there. Candace Parker's not on there. Sue Bird is not on. If you're doing a 30th anniversary, why are those guys? It's so random. Even Sophie's like, why the fuck am I on this calendar or this poster? Why am I on there? You know, it doesn't make any sense. Why isn't, Aaliyah Boston on there or somebody like that? It's pretty crazy. And she just says it. You know, if I was the league, I'm putting Caitlin Clark on everything.
She then discussed the anniversary poster, which generated the largest internet response. The league, the mill promotionath most well-known celebrity in the history of the sport was absent. Caitlin Clark, the player driving record attendance and television ratings, was nowhere to be seen. Rather, the graphic visual graphic. Talented athletes, without question. However, Clark was left Sophie. Her remarks were noteworthy because of this. She used her spot on the poster to disparage the league instead of viewing it as an honor. Her message was simple. Your main attraction should be at the center of any graphic you create to commemorate 30 years of the WNBA. You don't leave that player out while giving the limelight to someone with a much smaller part. Sophie referred to the decision as a joke, reiterating it for emphasis, and claimed that this was the reason Kathy Engelbert and the WNBA were receiving a lot of backlash on social media, claiming that they chose less prominent names over a generational talent and one of the best players the league has ever seen. Television ratings and attendance statistics continue to confirm that fact. The league may suffer financial consequences if Clark is left out of a significant marketing initiative. In this manner, no other major professional sports league would attempt to reduce its greatest draw. Take a moment to consider that. An active player is publicly describing how the league should market itself during a podcast without being paid to do it, and many believe she is making a stronger case than the individuals whose job it actually is. The most ironic aspect is that there is a real chance she will be fined by the league for speaking out. And that, in the opinion of many, encapsulates the current state of the WNBA, disappointing the player who is voicing concerns rather than resolving the problem she is bringing up. Sophie are all of this entire context. The narrative started on Wednesday, June 24th, during the Indiana Fever's game versus the Phoenix Mercury. The officials failed to call a foul when Alyssa Thomas drove her fist into Caitlin Clark's throat during that game. There was no whistle, no flagrant foul, and the game simply continued. Only after the film disseminated extensively online did the league analyze the play and raise it to a flagrant 2. Then came the punishment, which many thought was unexpectedly late. Alyssa Thomas was suspended for 1 game and fined $1,000 for hitting a player in the throat with her fist. Only $1,000. A $1,000 fine is hardly noticeable for a professional athlete. Someone may strike the league's biggest star in the throat, sit out 1 game, forfeit $1,000, and return to the court before the bruise even goes. If the league plainly fails to deliver that kind of behavior, think about what as it happens. However, Thomas continued to play as if nothing had happened because the officials on the floor did not rule it that way. Only after the video became viral online and the league was unable to ignore it did the repercussions materialize. The play did not catch on the system. It responded to the public scrutation. Players in the league understand that those are 2 entirely different circumstances. The Clark was the only night, the only incident that night's, the only occurrence. She completed the game as well. Valerian IE of Phoenix failed to give Clark enough space to land when he attempted a 3-pointer, leading Clark to land on IE's foot before falling to the ground and gripping her back. Officials assessed simply a personal foul and elected not to escalate it to a reckless closeout even after evaluating the play. The biggest star in the sport therefore suffered a shot to the throat and a risky landing beneath her feet in a single game, but the referees chose not to intervene more forcefully on either play. Clark's head coach stated that there was no timeline for her comeback, so she missed the next game against the Los Angeles Sparks. Furthermore, Sophie is by no means the only one expressing worries. Stephanie White, the head coach of the Indiana Fever, also made a statement. She described the officials' inaction as totally unsatisfactory and told reporters that the team was a generational superstar who took 2 needless, cheap shots that were not called. When both the head coach and one of the team's most popular players publicly criticized the refereeing within the same week, it goes beyond a few emotional reactions. It alludes to a locker room that is at capacity. Sophie continued to criticize the league as well. She focused on her own squad as well. She publicly acknowledged that the Fever's defense has been subpar, claiming that everyone is well aware of this. It's hard to make the statistics. Indiana points at points per game. The club let up well over 100 points against Phoenix, losing 1-11 to a Mercury team that usually scores closer to 80. It is tough to dismiss defensive mistakes when an offense that typically scores 80 points erupts for 111. This leads to another significant aspect. Stephanie White has developed her reputation as a defensive coach. Sophie's public criticism of the team's defense, which is widely acknowledged, unavoidably affects the coaching staff, whether or not that was her aim. She made the decision to be very honest, but there's no denying that such remarks put blame on the same area for which her head coach is most well known, making the upcoming filming session perhaps much more awkward. The league. Opponents are consistently earning trips to the free throw line. Sophie's offensive output, which averages roughly 5, has also decreased. She has scored 3 points in her last 3 games while continuing to come off the bench. Therefore, this is not a player criticizing everyone while speaking from the comfort of personal achievement. She is facing the same challenges as the rest of the squad, candidly admitting the league's problems as well as the Fever's flaws. To be honest, One of the main reasons people listen to her is because of her willingness. It's also critical to acknowledge that, despite all of her criticism, Sophie conveyed sincere hope for the team's future. The group is still struggling to figure out what needs to change, she explained, adding that the Fever has a lot of potential but just hasn't put everything together yet. These were the words of the words of the words of the words of someone's of her teammates of her teammates of her teammates. They originated from a player who thinks the team can accomplish much more if its defensive issues are resolved. Because of this viewpoint, her remarks seem sincere rather than merely bitter. Fans haven't taken any action to stop the argument in the interim. One of the most prominent WNBA stories of the week was Clark's exclusion from the anniversary poster. The league was heavily criticized on social media for the choice. When you combine that with the widely shared video of the blow to Clark's throat and the subsequent $1,000 punishment, a lot of fans started to wonder if league officials actually understood the worth of their product. When the critique is dismissed as a message's moment, which encapsulated her personality, must be mentioned in any recounting of this tale. She spoke with Phoenix veteran DeWanna Bonner during Indiana's 86-77 victory over the Phoenix Mercury a few nights prior, just pointing at her. Even though she only did that, the moment turned into one of the most popular memes of the week. Afterwards, Sophie said that the technical foul she was called was the lightest call she had ever received. She claims that while Bonner responded emotionally, she merely pointed and never said a word. Thus, there is a punch, a technical action, a simple foul, a live, a simple foul, a live action, a punch, a live, a whistle. The disparity in priority is essentially self-evident. It also helps to realize that there is a real rivalry between these two teams. DeWanna Bonner had to be held during the earlier pointing incident, which occurred after a heated exchange. For weeks, the Mercury and the Fever have been playing with a lot of passion, and Clark has frequently found herself absorbing the most intense contact. The blow to Clark's throat a few nights later was the turning point, and the point toward Bonner was really a minor flare. It's simpler to understand why so many people are outraged when you look at the complete scenario. The league has a once-in-a-generation player who consistently crowds arenas and pushes television ratings to levels the sport has never witnessed before. Yet critics argue that instead of protecting and promoting that star, the league has allowed opponents to target her, issued what many consider minimal punishment, left her off the 30th anniversary poster, and failed to feature her in the kind of marketing campaign that could generate enormous attention. It's similar to finding a really valuable resource and then not utilizing it. Sophie's remarks struck a deep chord because of this. They did not originate from an outside commentator hunting for headlines. They originated from a current colleague who expressed concerns that many people think are already clear and who had a lot to risk, including the potential for a fine. Her message was that the league's most popular player continues to sustain significant injuries while getting little protection and advancement, and